picture a man who decides to track his own emotions, like his anxiety, his dread, maybe sudden flashes of excitement.
Right.
But he doesn't just write them down in a diaried event. He's systematically treating his own mind as, raw, objective data.
Which is an intense way to live.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And now picture this exact same man spending 8 straight years obsessively dissecting barnacles.
Just barnacles.
Just barnacles, not for an afternoon. 8 years. He wrote 4 massive volumes on them, to the point where his kids genuinely believe that all fathers just spent their days hunched over microscopes looking at shellfish.
I love that story so much.
Right. They literally went to a neighbor's house and asked a friend, where does your father do his barnacles?
It's just such a brilliant, vivid image of that household. I mean, the absolute normalization of relentless, obsessive observation.
Yeah.
To those kids, studying crustacean anatomy wasn't weird at all. It was just like the baseline reality of what adults did all day.
Well, welcome to the deep dive, everyone. You are tuning into Minds in Motion from a scientist's lens.
Glad to be here with you all.
And real quick, make sure you subscribe to the channel to support what we do so we can keep bringing you these explorations.
Yes, please do.
So today, our mission is to extract the core mechanisms of how that barnacle-obsessed man, Charles Darwin, obviously actually worked.
We're going to pull apart our source material today to really show you how deeply meticulous, agonizingly slow approach to the world isn't just some, historical footnote.
Right. It's a masterclass. We are looking at his life to pull out 5 key lessons on observation, strategy, and patience. Things you can practically apply to the noise of your own life today.
Because to really understand how radical his methods were, we kind of need to strip away the mythology surrounding him.
Yeah, the guy with the massive beard holding a skull.
Exactly. He wasn't born a scientific icon. He was born in 1809 to a wealthy, accomplished family, but Charles was, well, by his own father's admission, a pretty unexceptional student.
Which is always comforting to hear.
Right. He tried studying medicine at Edinburgh, which you have to remember, in the early 19th century, this is before anesthesia.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no thanks.
It was a gruesome, brutal affair. He found it utterly unbearable. So he pivoted.
Smart man.
He went to Cambridge to study theology instead, mostly just with the intention of retreating to the countryside to be a parson.
Just live a quiet life.
Basically. And while he was supposed to be studying, he spent the vast majority of his time just obsessively collecting beetles.
Which, honestly, I have to say is incredibly relatable. It's that classic, well, mid-school is way too terrifying, so I guess I'll just go to the woods and look at bugs career pivot.
A tale as old as time, really. But then, in 1831, when he's just 22 years old, a spot opens up for a gentleman companion on a surveying ship called the HMS Beagle.
And his dad hated this idea, right?
Oh, he objected at first, yeah. He thought it was a massive waste of time, but a relative intervened and Charles went. And that 5-year voyage is what ultimately changed the trajectory of human history.
So let's unpack the reality of that voyage. This brings us to lesson 1, which is really about dismantling how most of us think scientific discovery actually works.
Oh, we are culturally conditioned to believe in that Hollywood eureka moment.
Exactly. The genius is sitting under a tree, an apple falls on their head, a lightning bolt strikes, the dramatic music swells, and suddenly, boom, they understand the fundamental laws of the universe.
We love that myth. We want our discoveries to be sudden, dramatic, instantaneous. It just feels magical.
Right, but the reality of the Beagle voyage was the exact opposite of a lightning strike. For 5 grueling years, Darwin sails to the Cape Verde Islands, the coast of South America, the Galapagos, Tahiti, New Zealand, Australia.
And what is he doing?
He's not having grand epiphanies. He's just collecting stuff. Rocks, fossils, birds, plants.
And this is the critical distinction. He did not arrive at the Galapagos Islands with the grand theory of evolution in his back pocket, just like looking for the right evidence to prove it.
That's a huge misconception.
A massive historical misconception. He arrived with open eyes, a notebook, and a really jarring lack of assumptions. He just noticed things.
You're just taking it all in.
Right. He noticed that mockingbirds look slightly different from island to island. He noticed giant tortoise shells had different ridges depending on where they lived.
And from the sources we went through, what really blew my mind was that he didn't even realize the significance of the famous Galapagos finches at the time.
Not at all.
He didn't even label which specific islands he shot them on because he thought they were just a random assortment of blackbirds and grosbeaks.
Yeah, he was just gathering whatever he found.
He was basically acting like a modern AI model being trained from scratch.
Oh, that's actually a fascinating way to look at it.
Well, think about how we train machine learning today. You don't give the computer a rigid rule book on what a cat is.
Right, you just show it cats.
You feed it 10 million photos of cats and 10 million photos of not cats without a hypothesis. You just feed it raw data until the algorithm organically recognizes the pattern on its own.
That's spot on.
Darwin was doing that to his own brain. He was just injecting raw biological data without forcing it into a predetermined box.
That analogy perfectly captures the mechanics of his process. Because the pattern didn't emerge until he returned to England.
Right.
An expert ornithologist named John Gould examined Darwin's bird specimens and told him, look, these aren't just weird variations of common birds. These are entirely distinct, previously unknown species of finch.
Wow.
The data was collected first, completely blindly. The theory came much, much later.
There's a quote from Darwin that perfectly encapsulates this discipline.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote, "I have steadily endeavored to keep my mind free, so as to give up any hypothesis, however much beloved, as soon as facts are shown to be opposed to it."
And we really have to pause here and ask, why is that so remarkably difficult for human beings to do?
It's incredibly hard.
It is. Neurologically, psychologically, we are wired for confirmation bias. We fall in love with our own hypotheses.
Definitely.
You come up with an idea in a meeting or a political stance or a business strategy, and your brain immediately starts filtering the world to seek out only the data that proves you were right all along.
It's just easier that way.
Exactly. It reduces cognitive dissonance. So letting the data lead possessing the sheer discipline to actively look for information that destroys your favorite idea is a really rare, uncomfortable skill.
So he successfully trains his mental algorithm. The pattern emerges. By 1838, he roughs out the core mechanism of natural selection.
Yep.
By 1844, he has written a comprehensive 230-page essay laying out exactly how species evolve. He has the answer.
Yeah.
And then he throws it in a drawer.
Yeah. He doesn't publish on the origin of species until 1859.
A staggering 20-year gap between having a world-changing idea and actually sharing it with the world. This brings us to lesson 2, which is playing the long game.
Yeah.
But okay, I have to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
20 years. I know the narrative is that he was being careful. But from a modern perspective, this sounds exactly like extreme procrastination.
It does sound like that.
Or some 19th century version of imposter syndrome disguised as, doing more research. I mean, spending 8 of those years hyper-fixating on barnacle anatomy. That sounds like a guy desperately avoiding hitting the publish button on the real work.
It is entirely fair to challenge that, especially today when the whole ethos is move fast and break things.
Exactly.
And yes, part of the delay was genuine fear. He knew exactly what he was sitting on.
It was explosive.
Completely. His theory directly contradicted the biblical account of creation. It removed humanity from its special, elevated pedestal above the animal kingdom.
That's a big deal.
He actually told a close friend that confessing his theory felt, quote, like confessing a murder.
Wow.
In Victorian England, this was going to invite the absolute wrath of the church and the scientific establishment.
So he was just terrified.
He was terrified, but he wasn't paralyzed. The delay wasn't procrastination. It was architecture.
Okay, what do you mean by architecture?
Well, the barnacles weren't a distraction. They were a necessary, brutal stress test. Darwin realized that if he couldn't explain the minute, granular variations in one single, weird family of crustaceans, the scientific community would just tear him apart when he tried to explain the origin of all life on Earth.
So the barnacles were him building up his armor.
Exactly. He spent those 20 years anticipating every possible attack and building an evidential case so vast, so staggeringly detailed, that it would be like trying to argue with a mountain.
That's a great way to put it.
And the ultimate proof that this long game was a deliberate strategy came in 1858.
Oh, right, the Alfred Russel Wallace moment. Now, this is the ultimate nightmare scenario for a procrastinator.
Completely. Wallace was a younger, brilliant naturalist working over in the Malay archipelago. And he independently comes up with the exact same mechanism of natural selection.
No, on his own.
Yes. He writes a short essay about it and sends it directly to Darwin for his thoughts.
Oh, man. Imagine opening that mail. Someone else did your homework, arrived at the exact same world-shattering conclusion, and is about to turn it in first.
But notice what happens. Because Darwin had spent 2 decades meticulously laying bricks, There wasn't some bitter priority dispute.
Right, they shared it.
They presented their findings jointly to the Linnean Society of London. But when Darwin finally published his book a year later, it wasn't just a brief essay like Wallace's.
It was a monster.
It was an impenetrable fortress of data. Wallace had the flash of insight, but Darwin had the undeniable, overwhelming weight of proof. The long game ensured the theory didn't just enter the world, it conquered it.
So taking your time to build an airtight case isn't a weakness at all. But that brings up a huge logistical question, which leads us to lesson 3.
Okay.
How do you spend 20 years building a global airtight scientific case when you are practically confined to your couch?
Right, his health.
Yeah, Darwin suffered from mysterious chronic illnesses for most of his adult life. He rarely left Downhouse in Kent.
This is where we see his sheer operational genius. If you can't go out into the world to gather the data, you architect a system to bring the world's data to you.
Makes sense.
Darwin utilized correspondence as a primary research method. Over his lifetime, he wrote something like 15,000 letters.
Wait, 15,000 letters?
Yeah.
In the 1800s.
Yeah.
I complain about clearing my email inbox today, and I have copy-paste.
I know.
He's doing this with a quill and ink, managing global logistics through the Victorian Postal Service. How did he even organize all of this?
He was essentially a human database. He didn't just read these letters, he dissected them. He literally cut up letters and books with scissors and filed the snippets into elaborate, highly organized portfolios based on topic.
That's incredible.
He even had a spindle system for cross-referencing.
He built an analog internet.
That is precisely what it was. And the beauty of his network was how democratic his curiosity was.
What do you mean?
Well, he didn't just write to esteemed professors at Oxford. He wrote to ship captains about the animals they saw on remote islands.
Oh, interesting.
He wrote to working-class pigeon breeders to ask exactly how many generations it took to establish a specific feather pattern. He wrote to gardeners about the mechanics of climbing plants. He even wrote to his cousin to ask if blue-eyed cats tended to be deaf.
I love that. He's just relentlessly tapping into the hive mind.
Because he cared about the quality of the observation, not the prestige of the observer.
That's such a good point.
A pigeon breeder knows vastly more about artificial selection than a theoretical theologian. So Darwin's lesson for us here is profound. Build your network around genuine curiosity, not status.
Right.
The people who have their hands in the dirt, who actually know the things you don't, are your most underutilized resource.
But, okay, when you have an analog internet of 15,000 people feeding you data, some of that data is going to contradict your theory.
Inevitably.
Which brings us to lesson 4, and one of the most fascinating psychological moves he makes in his book. Darwin didn't just compile the evidence that proved he was right, he actively obsessed over the gaps in his own argument.
And there were massive gaps at the time. Huge ones. He was agonizing over the fossil record, which was incomplete and seemed to show complex species appearing suddenly rather than gradually.
Yeah.
He worried about how hybrid animals were often sterile, and his biggest headache was the human eye.
The eye is incredible. He literally called it an organ of extreme perfection.
Right, because the logic of natural selection relies on tiny incremental advantages.
Right, step by step.
So how could a half-formed eye possibly provide a survival advantage? What good is an eye that only works 5% of the way?
And his solution was to point out that a 5% eye, just a cluster of cells that can barely detect the difference between light and shadow, is infinitely better for avoiding a predator than a 0% eye.
Exact.
But what gets me isn't just that he solved the problem, it's how he presented the problem to the public.
Yes.
He didn't hide his anxiety about the eye. He didn't sweep the fossil record under the rug. He literally titled entire chapters in his book, Difficulties with a Theory and Miscellaneous Objections.
It's an extraordinary rhetorical choice.
It's like writing the one-star reviews for your own product before anyone else can even test it.
That's exactly what it is.
If I'm trying to sell you on a revolutionary idea, why on earth would I hand you a list of all the reasons it might be wrong? It feels like giving ammunition to your enemies.
It might feel that way, but structurally, it's a concept in persuasion and psychology known as stealing thunder.
Stealing thunder.
Yeah. In a courtroom debate, if you know your opponent is going to bring up a weakness in your case, you bring it up first.
Because then you control it.
Because objections do not vanish simply because you ignore them, they fester. If the audience discovers the flaw on their own, they feel manipulated and they stop trusting you.
Wow. So by stating the objection first, you completely disarm it.
Exactly. You control the framing. By explicitly naming his doubts, Darwin proved to his readers that he was a thinker who valued objective truth more than his own ego.
That's powerful.
He was saying, I have thought of every conceivable way my theory could fail, and I'm walking you through them honestly. The vulnerability isn't a weakness, it is the ultimate flex of confidence.
Think about applying that today. Like if you walk into a boardroom or a pitch meeting and you start by saying, look, here are the 3 biggest reasons my proposal might fail, and here's exactly how we mitigate them, you instantly become the most trusted person in the room.
Precisely. You aren't a salesman anymore. You're a partner in finding the truth.
Sitting with difficulty builds durability. I love that.
It really does.
So Darwin drops this bomb on society. He fundamentally alters humanity's understanding of biology and our place in the universe. He weathers the storm of criticism because his fortress is so well built.
He survived it all.
You would think the guy would take a well-deserved victory lap or maybe try to tackle a cosmos next. But instead, and this brings us to lesson 5 in his final years, he looks down at the dirt, literally.
He does. In the twilight of his life, Darwin becomes absolutely obsessed with earthworms.
Again, I have to challenge this.
I knew you would.
Well, I know we revere the man, but isn't there a point of diminishing returns? He's a certified genius. He decoded the origins of life, and we have sources describing him standing in his garden, making his son play the bassoon loudly next to the earthworm burrows, just to test if the worms could feel the vibrations of the music.
That's a fantastic image.
It is. And he meticulously measured how long it took worms to bury a stone platform by a single inch, which took years. But isn't this just a colossal waste of a world-class mind?
Well, it only looks like a waste of time if you misunderstand what made his mind world-class to begin with.
Okay, unpack that.
The earthworms weren't a step down. They were the exact same muscle he used to decode evolution. To Darwin, wonder was not a passive mood that randomly strikes you when you see a beautiful sunset. Wonder was a strict discipline.
A discipline.
It was a daily practice of directing your attention.
So attention is a verb.
Exactly. To him, nothing in nature was mundane, and nothing was beneath his curiosity. Everything was data.
Even dirt.
Even dirt. If an earthworm is moving soil, it is participating in the vast, interconnected machinery of life, and therefore it is worthy of deep, sustained attention. In fact, his book on earthworms, published in 1881, right before he died, initially sold faster than On the Origin of Species.
Which is just a staggering fact.
It really is.
But it proves that people are captivated by anyone who looks closely at the world. There's a sentiment often attributed to Darwin. The exact quote's origin is debated, but it entirely encapsulates his life. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, but the one most responsive to change.
And responsiveness requires attention.
Yes.
It requires noticing the subtle shifts in the wind, the slight variation in the finch's beak, the slow movement of the earthworm. We live in an era where we are constantly incentivized to skim, to rush past the mundane in search of the next big dopamine hit.
Oh, absolutely.
Darwin's life is a radical argument for slowing down.
So if we pull all these threads together from our deep dive today, the architecture of a genius mind actually looks surprisingly accessible.
Very much so.
You don't need a lightning bolt of inspiration. You just need to let the raw data lead, even when it's uncomfortable.
Right.
You play the long game, building an undeniable fortress of evidence rather than rushing to publish. You cultivate an analog internet of diverse, curious people.
Yes, the correspondent.
You systematically steal your own thunder by naming your doubts out loud. And above all, you practice wonder as a daily, rigorous discipline.
Darwin changed the world quietly from his house while battling illness. He did it simply by looking intensely at things that other people walked past 1,000 times.
Wow.
And the immediate relevance for you listening right now is this. What problem, what data set, or what metaphorical earthworm in your own career or life have you been rushing past because you assume it's just too mundane to matter?
That's a great question.
What are you failing to observe because you're in too much of a hurry to conclude?
That is the real challenge. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a new final thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
We talked about his meticulous observation. If you were to start a notebook today, treating your own daily emotions, anxieties, and excitements purely as raw, objective data, the exact way Darwin did, how might that change the way you react to the world tomorrow?
Oh, that's a brilliant experiment.
Right, because if you treat your reactions as data, maybe you stop judging them and start actually learning from them.
It's a completely different paradigm.
It really is. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. If this conversation made you rethink how you process the world, share it with someone who might need a reminder to slow down and look a little closer.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Stay curious, watch the earthworms, keep your notebook close, and we will catch you next time.